Hello, Salesforce developers, and welcome to another monthly edition of our Ask Me Anything series. I would love to see who all is on this stream. So go ahead and type in the chat where you're tuning in from, where you're at. And I will display a few of those as well. We've already got one from Niket here saying, "Hi, Danny. Hi, Niket. It's nice to see you tuning into our stream again." And we have one here from Vernon as well. Hello, Vernon. Thank you for joining us today for our stream. Now, today's topic is DevOps for Data Cloud. So I have an amazing cast of product managers here with me on stream today. Let's bring on Rohit.
Hi, everyone.
Say hello, Rohit. And
How's it
let
going?
me give you a little bit more real estate here so I'm not consuming all of it. And we also have Gilson. Hello, Gilson.
Hello, hello everyone.
And hello to William. Hi,
Hey,
William.
hey team, hi everyone. Great to be here.
All right, so we're gonna go around and I'm going to allow each one of our product managers and product experts to introduce themselves and tell you what their area of specialty is. And how about you also tell us where you live, which city you're in? Let's start with you, Rohit.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rohit Mehta. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm working out of the Salesforce office today. I work on the Sandbox product within our developer services group. So all of the amazing customizations you build, typically done in sandboxes. I'm happy to talk more about it today. Really excited to take your questions as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Rohit. And Gilson, what about you?
Hey, thank you, Danielle. So I'm Gilson Canario. I work in the DevOps Center team, and I currently live in Florida. So it's a city called Pembroke Pines, which is like 30 minutes away from Miami. And basically, that's where I live. I'm originally from Dominican Republic, so yeah, my main language is Spanish, and yeah, that's it. That if you have any questions, I'm happy here to answer anything
And
you have.
Gilson, are you tuning in from Florida right now?
No, actually, I am in Buenos Aires, Argentina, which I'm meeting the team right now for yearly release plan. So, um, taking some time here to
I'm
be
so
with all of you.
jealous. I would love to be in Argentina right now. Super jealous. What about you, William?
Hey everyone, William Ye here. You can call me Will. I'm a product on Data Cloud team. Within Data Cloud, I kind of lead one of the horizontal layers. So if you think about it from typical left to right, from data coming in, harmonize and act, I focus on how Data Cloud works with the rest of the platform. So my team owns things like data kit packaging, Sandbox, Data Cloud One, admin, and other areas. Kind of ties Data Cloud deeply integrated with the platform. So yeah, excited to be here, and I'm based here in the Bay Area as well as Rohit, and actually on a different floor right now with Rohit, I'm guessing at the tower.
Awesome. And we have a lot of people on stream right now because the chat is moving super duper fast. I'm going to see if I can call out some of the people where they're tuning in from. We have Kara tuning in from Dallas, where I live. And we also have Sarah Grove, tuning in from Omaha. And Christy Fedora, a wonderful developer marketing person, tuning in from London. And we have Rodrigo from sunny Veracruz, Mexico. Awesome. And Katie from Seattle. Hi, Katie. Thank you for joining us on stream. And looky here, Switzerland. Hi, Emma, tuning in from Switzerland. I'm only going to be able to call out a few of these. Thank you so much for everyone that's participating. We love participation. So Pakistan, hello, Rimsha. Peter from Allentown, Pennsylvania. And we have Abhishek from Toronto, Canada. Anne from Nigeria. Kim from our team also from San Francisco. More from Elle from Senegal. And more from Mexico City. And there's a lot more. France as well. Hello, France. Bonjour. All right. So thank you so much for all that participation. Now, speaking of participation, since this is an Ask Me Anything session, what that means is you can type in your questions for me and the product managers to answer. So if you want to submit a question, all you have to do is type it into the chat on LinkedIn or type it into the chat on YouTube. And we have my amazing developer marketing team working behind the scenes to gather all those questions. And then I will be feeding those to our product managers and product experts. Now, before we get started with the Ask Me Anything session, I first want to share something with you. The first thing is we have TDX coming up in March. TDX 25 is going to be an amazing technical conference full of expert-led technical sessions. There will be a lot of Agentforce, abilities to get hands-on with Agentforce. We're having a massive Agentforce hackathon. So if anyone saw anything about that hackathon that happened in New York City that I was at a few months ago, we're doing it again, bigger and better in San Francisco. There's going to be tons of product demos. There's going to be all types of people from the community. And most of all, there is going to be loads and loads of fun. So make sure that you come join us at TDX. March 6th and March 7th, I believe, are the dates. If I have the dates wrong, can someone from developer marketing correct me in the chat? Now, any of you going to TDX this year? William, Rohit, Gilson?
Yeah, I'll be there. I actually have a couple questions.
All of you? Okay, so all of you are going to TDX. Anyone speaking?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 sessions. And I think Rohit got some sandbox as well.
Okay, so the sessions are already published. Those of you that are tuning in, the sessions are already actually published on the TDX site. Someone could drop that link in for TDX and the sessions. You could look up my sessions or Rohit sessions or Williams or Gilson's, and you can bookmark those sessions. Yes, you can bookmark them so that you don't miss them when TDX is happening. All right. Now, before we get into our short presentation from each of our product experts, I first have to show you something that may be a little bit familiar, which is our forward-looking statement. Yes, so our product managers or our product experts, or me even, might make some statements about some future enhancements that are coming to Salesforce or one of our Salesforce products. As you know, Salesforce is a publicly traded company. So please make all of your purchasing decisions based on what is available and not one of the forward-looking statements that we may make on today's live stream. All right. So who is going to kick off the presentation? We're going to have a short presentation by our product manager and product experts just to teach you about the DevOps products and what is available today to work with Data Cloud. And who's going to kick that off?
Danielle, that'll be me.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Let me bring the slides up. Or I don't know, Danielle, if you're going to bring the slides up. Either is fine by me.
You can go ahead and bring them up.
Okay, perfect.
And as soon as you click the share button.
Is this slide for you?
Let me see. There it goes. All right. Yes.
All right. Well, now that we've gone through the forward-looking statement, let's get into the meat of the discussion here, right? So we all know why we are here today. We are here today to learn about DevOps with Data Cloud. Now, DevOps or application lifecycle management, these are processes that teams follow in order to build new changes or any type of changes on for your application, right? It is the entire step and the journey of planning the change, creating the change, building and testing those changes, releasing those changes to your end users, and then finally monitoring and observing those changes as they are running in your production. Now, the thing to note here is ALM and DevOps is a process that is followed across the software industry, right? This is not unique to Salesforce. What Salesforce has done, though, is Salesforce has built tooling for all of these different steps of that DevOps process, right? So whether it is planning, where we have tools to help you create work items, whether it is building changes, where we have tools like sandboxes and IDEs to build changes, or environments for testing like partial and full sandboxes, environments or tools for releasing changes, DevOps Center, or even for observing changes in production, event monitoring. Salesforce has you covered across the entire journey. What I also want to call out is that as Salesforce adds new products to its portfolio, Data Cloud, Agentforce. Salesforce is not trying to build completely new processes and add new paradigms for you to learn. It's trying to extend existing paradigms and existing tooling so that it's easy for you to start working with these new products. So a lot of what we'll talk about in today's session is going to be the same tools and products that you've used for all of your changes, but now compatible with Data Cloud. So again, just to kind of ground us into what are some of the tools that you use today. A lot of you may be familiar with Salesforce sandboxes. Sandboxes are isolated environments, which are replicas of your production org, where you can build and test changes safely without any impact to your production org. We have 4 types of sandboxes, Dev, Dev Pro, Partial, and Full. And depending on these different types, we either copy over just the metadata of your production org, so all of your configurations, or also some data. In the case of partial copy, it's some of the data. In the case of full sandboxes, it's all of the data. Now, again, with Data Cloud development, you use the same exact sandboxes that you use currently, right? So there's no additional, there's not a different type of sandbox that you have to go and purchase. There's no different type of sandbox that you have to go and learn. We've tried to extend the same exact tooling so you can build your changes in isolation. Obviously, sandboxes are great because you can parallelize work across your teams. You can build and test changes securely. You can prototype. You can experiment. You don't have to worry about breaking production org. Anything that's done in the sandbox stays in the sandbox. All right, I'm going to now hand it over to William, who's going to talk a little bit more about Data Cloud and sandboxes.
Yep. Thanks, Rohit. So yeah, Data Cloud and Sandbox. So this has been long awaited by many of our customers and developers and admins. Rohit? I think we just lost the slide. Is that right? Hey, Rohit?
Yep.
Can you share the screen again?
Should be live, but let me...
Danielle, it's not just me, right? Let me make sure. And you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay, I can bring it back. I was trying to make sure you guys didn't have any background noise from me. All right, I brought the slide back. We're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, Data Cloud Sandbox. So yes, as Rohit mentioned, right, we don't want to create a new class of sandbox or new type of sandbox, if you will. Salesforce has a great DevOps story, sandbox story in the enterprise space, really, right? Customers are familiar with it. They love having it. Of course, when we first launched Data Cloud or CDP back then, before it's really kind of fully ingrained into the platform, we didn't have sandbox support. We had to build everything from the ground up, if you will, right? As many of you might be familiar today, we really treated the core platform as the kind of foundation, and so we want to make sure that Data Cloud, works natively in terms of metadata accessibility, with the rest of the platform being able to use flow, triggers, and things like that. But it's not easy because essentially we built a brand new data lake to support these big data use cases, right? It's no longer just a transactional use case, but actually your big data strategy, being able to ingest all the different type of data, resolving your data silos, and being able to power your AI, your BI use cases, or even agent use cases. And so having this new data lake was a kind of major challenge as well to fully ingrain with the infrastructure we have built at Salesforce. But nevertheless, we did take on the challenge. It took some time, but as of last year, we launched Data Cloud Sandbox. And by that means, it is Data Cloud in these sandboxes, right? It's not a new sandbox type. Data Cloud is fully functional for you to build, test, and deploy in sandbox environments. So you get a fully functional Data Cloud in each sandbox. So let's say you provision a Data Cloud in your production, and now you created a sandbox. That sandbox will have its own dedicated Data Cloud data lake. You can implement in there, you can play around with it. You don't need to worry about it, interfering with your production data lake, just like how you would expect from a sandbox being isolated. There are a few kind of details and caveats, right? So for example, given the big data nature itself, we don't copy the data for you. Doesn't matter which type of sandbox you're in. You're in Dev, Dev Pro, partial copy, full copy. We'll replicate most of your configurations. So your metadata, right? Your data models, your calculated insights, your identity resolution rules, your actions. All of these things are replicated over, including your connections. But we won't actually copy the actual data or the authentication information. So what you would do is once you create a sandbox with Data Cloud, go and re-enable your connections. Either you connect it to the same sources, or you have a staging or test data sets. You can also point to a different place so that the data is then ingested and hydrated, or zero copied in to power your sandbox for use. But of course, DevOps is still a critical piece. So our plan has always been to align with the tooling and the DX that Salesforce offers, including chain sets, and metadata API, and DevOps Center. The latter two, originally we planned to have that out in November, but it was slightly delayed due to a moratorium that many of you might be aware. But it's coming out live actually in a week's time. So once that's light up in the metadata API, you can access all these DevOps data kits, if you will, to move metadata between sandboxes or to production for Data Cloud using DevOps Center and CLI. And then one last thing is Data Cloud, as many of you know, is consumed by the consumption credits. And so for the sandboxes, it actually works the same way. What happens is there's a separate pool of Data Cloud sandbox credits. All of the Data Cloud usage in sandboxes will be deducted from that same pool for a customer. And the usage meters are just mirrored based on your production. So, it's all the same things you have: data services, batch streaming, pipelines, your queries, your usage, and your segmentation activation. Next slide, please. And so here's a kind of high-level view of our roadmap. I know many of you are very interested and eagerly to get a bit more view on it. When we first launched, obviously our view was kind of high level, given it takes some time to build, right? So we started with a beta, which we actually accelerated. Initially, we were going to go with pilot, but due to the overwhelming interest, we leveled it up to a beta. And as of last year, we GA'd this product with the initial SKU launch, having your usage being visible in Digital Wallet, started supporting merge back with chain sets, and very quickly metadata API and DevOps Center. And we also supported Data Cloud One connection. So for many of you who might not be familiar, Data Cloud One is our solution to help you connect multiple orgs to a single data cloud as your home. And we actually support that same model for sandboxes, so you can test them out in Sandbox. And fast forward looking into spring release, we got a few more enhancements coming in. We want to make it easier for you to do DevOps with Data Cloud metadata. If you start playing around with it, it's quite complicated. A single data stream can have tens of objects behind the scenes, because these are all process definitions. They're no longer like your traditional custom objects where it's just a flat table, right? For Data Cloud, your streams, your calculated insights, these are all process definitions to help you generate the data into the objects or views for you. And so we have some enhancements there to make it easier for you to pick these metadata, like having a single button to generate a package.xml for you. So what are all the things inside the data kit that you want to retrieve for deployment. There's also more feature enhancements. Obviously, when we launch with GA, we try to get as many features as we can. We also continue to work on all the DevOps story. We don't want to make you wait for another 2 years. So we kind of went with a crawl, walk, run approach. Started by launching the support, being able to DevOps, and also more features that we're adding. And so that's kind of our plan. We got more things exciting for you, and we'll talk about it at TDX as well. So please join us at TDX. We got a couple sessions on Data Cloud sandboxes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about DevOps Center. So basically, DevOps Center, what it does, it basically helps you manage this entire ALM process that Rohit and William just talked about a little bit, and does that by providing basically like a declarative experience that would help you to manage your changes and releases with an easy-to-use UI. So basically, what we're trying to do here is just provide, let's say, modern DevOps practices to teams, for example, such as the use of source control, so that teams can collaborate together more effectively and they can continue using the tools of their own choices. I don't know whether they are more used to or more comfortable working with declarative UI or click-based interfaces, or maybe more programmatic interfaces, such as the CLI and IDE. It all depends on your preference, and both of the, let's say, personas based on the spectrum can work together. A few, let's say, key enhancement or key features that we provide is that DevOps Center basically helps you track changes or any changes that you do in a sandbox as you're making it. And it does that by basically leveraging source tracking. So that way, in DevOps Center, we display those changes that will help you to choose which one you would like to continue moving on in your ALM, and then you choose those, add it to a work item, and then move it along in your ALM process. It integrates with source control so that you can help teams, or your team can actually take advantage of its benefit, uh, regardless of whether you are a seasoned uh, the programmer or seasoned team that uses version control, or you just started. It's okay, because DevOps Center basically manage all of that for you behind the scenes. For example, managing your branches strategies, managing each of your features creation, commit, merge, all that process is done behind the scenes. You can actually configure each of your ALM stages based on your own workflow, and also migrate your changes from each stage of your pipeline to the next, using clicks instead of code. And for that operation, we call it promotion. And it's basically what it does is that merges the branches in source control and also deploy the changes into the org. So it's a two-step operation done into one. And the good thing is that all of this is done with clicks instead of code. And lastly, it enables what we call the hybrid team flow, which is basically provide a one interface, a one place where, if you have a spectrum, as I mentioned before, like developers or that are more programmatic side that they like to use an IDE or a CLI, and then also you have a team that is more on the declarative side. Uh, both can work from they both can work using the tool they're more comfortable with, and all of their own environments will be up to sync. Uh, DevOps Center is available today, and you can install it from the setup. You just go to setup, search for DevOps Center, and from there you should be able to see it. And with that, I want to say thank you, and I'll pass it over to you, Danielle.
Daniel, you're on mute.
Ah, that means everybody just missed all the awesome things I said. Oh, gosh. I'll say thank you, Gilson. Thank you, William. And thank you, Rohit, for that amazing presentation. And now everyone has a good foundation for what Data Cloud sandboxes are, what DevOps Center, and all of the ways that they can use it for their changes and their development and handling their CI/CD. All right. Now, just to repeat for some of those that may have joined our stream a little bit later. So you can ask your questions by typing them into the YouTube chat or into the LinkedIn chat. Now, after you type those questions will then be put into a doc by my amazing developer marketing partners, and I will feed those over to our product managers and product experts. Now, the one thing that I did forget to mention in the beginning is we will only be answering questions about DevOps as it relates to Data Cloud. So if you have any questions on any other products or any other topic that is not related to this topic in Data Cloud, we will most likely not be covering that question. So please make sure that all the questions that you type are on par with the topic that we're here to answer questions about today. Also, there was an awesome correction by both Kim and Christy. Kim and Christy corrected me. It is TDX is March 5th and March 6th. So March 5th and March 6th are the dates for TDX. So make sure you bookmark those dates. All right. Now, let's get into some questions. So our first question comes from LinkedIn, and it's Kieran Rao's question. And I believe that this is partially answered by the roadmap, which is how can we securely mask or anonymize sensitive data in our data pipelines prior to storing it or moving it? How do different types of anonymization align with the required privacy laws? And how can this be monitored as well? Let me see if I can find that question. There we go. Any one of our product experts want to take this question?
I guess I can take it because I think this is probably more geared towards Data Cloud. So there's a couple thinking on this, right? So this is kind of the same for production as well, right? You need to kind of manage the same compliance requirement when you ingest data into your production environment. And so similarly for sandboxes. In many ways, you can do it from kind of when you're ingesting it to transform the data to be compliant. Data Cloud itself also has a roadmap for data masking that we're working on. So this is on the Data Cloud side, and that's once we have that available, it will also support sandboxes. So you can do the kind of same operation on the Data Cloud side. Essentially, it's kind of like a compliance, transforming of the data. I will say that if you do have data masking for core data today on the platform side, what you could do is once you create a new sandbox, first use the core data mask to mask your data copied by the sandbox environment, and then ingest into Data Cloud. That way, you kind of have a kind of pre-masked data ingested into Data Cloud. So obviously, that might not match with your external data. So that's where often I see customers where they have synthetic data sets available, predefined, so that they can ingest into the environment. Because that's really before you get it into the Data Cloud, how do you have that in the right formatting or compliance requirement you need for your non-admins or third party to work with you?
Yeah, and William, if I can just quickly add to it, I think you mentioned this already, but just so that people don't miss it, when the sandbox is created, we set up a new Data Cloud tenant, right? And so it's an empty Data Cloud tenant. It does not have any of the data that's in your production Data Cloud. And so you have to ingest that data either through the sandbox or any other data source that you're using. If it's in the sandbox, you want to run masking first, the data mask product that we have today that lets you mask all of your Salesforce data prior to ingesting it. Now, each of these steps are separate and manual, and we're looking at ways to automate it so that it's easy for you to get started with a Data Cloud with data, and that has already been masked. So that's something that we're working on improving, but today it's separate steps.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer, William and Rohit. All right. Our next question is, what are some best practices for version control and CI/CD for Data Cloud using the Salesforce CLI? This comes from Abhishek. Who would like to take this? Gilson?
Yeah, I'm not able to answer that question because that's mostly related to Data Cloud and the CLI. My expertise is more on the DevOps Center side.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. So first of all, that's kind of the work I mentioned earlier to enable it on metadata API, so you can actually retrieve them from CLI. Today, what you're retrieving, you can retrieve some data kits, but that's really more for the ISV story. So now that we support sandboxes, we introduce a new type of data kit. So data kit is a new entity that Data Cloud introduced to help you organize and sequence your Data Cloud metadata. I kind of mentioned that earlier in the overview slide, right? Data Cloud metadata is very complex because everything is process driven, right? This is the definition of how we bring data in, how we transform it, how we calculate the data, and then put it into the object. It's not just, hey, this is a flat object with the tables and columns, and you can just access it. And so sequencing is very important, right? For example, if you have a calculate insights, you need to have your model in first. You might actually have your calculate insights dependent on another calculate insights. So which one comes in first and second, that's also important. And so DataKit is a key piece for this. And traditionally, we supported ISVs. And so ISVs create a solution that can be reused across multiple orgs. They don't have these kind of exact org context. Versus now that we support customers in sandboxes and admins, you can have multiple data spaces. You could be deploying things into different kind of subsets. And so we introduced this new DevOps data kit type for you to deploy, and that metadata will be live on metadata API on 254.7 patch. So once the orgs get that, it will be available, and with the same metadata API, DevOps Center will be able to see your entities. CLI will be able to see your entities. And so what that means is, now moving forward, once you create streams, you put them into the data kit, you can retrieve those metadata in that current state and deploy in the other org, or that's where you will be kind of managing your sources, if you will. So the metadata will be the same, but obviously thinking about version control, you need to think about how you're deploying these steps This is something we're still evolving as well, because this is new to Salesforce too, if you think about it, to have these kind of process definition driven deployment. And so we'll continue to improve on that, and we also have features that we're thinking about to make it easier for you to manage it over time.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer. And we have another question, which I believe was typed into the chat prior to us finishing the presentation, but it doesn't hurt to recover this question. And it comes from Sarah Grove. And it is, do you burn credits while working with data in Sandbox?
Yes. Yeah. So we charge Data Cloud Sandbox in the similar way to production, meaning all your Data Cloud usage in that Sandbox org, there will be credit consumption. The consumption metering, the multipliers, and the usage type is mirrored from your production. But obviously, there's a separate pool of credits just for sandboxes. So, how much on that depends on your working with your account team.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add that is a prerequisite today. So some of you who have explored this or have tried using Data Cloud in the sandbox may notice that once you go into the sandbox, you see a message that says you need to get the license, and that's essentially the credit license. You need to first work with your account executive to get the license, and then only can you start using Data Cloud in the sandbox. And then after that, as William mentioned, you burn down the credits depending on your usage.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer. And this is another really, really good question, actually, from Emma on LinkedIn. And it's, are there any plans to allow pausing or disabling of data streams in a sandbox? Use case is so we can maintain the Data Cloud metadata data config in a sandbox after finishing development and promoting to prod, but keep available and ready for any hypercare without incurring unnecessary credit consumption from sandbox. Sorry, it cuts it off after there, but the rest of it was incurring unnecessary credit consumption from sandbox.
Yeah, so not currently, but it is something that we've been looking into. This is really more of a data stream capability rather than sandbox, to be honest. So yeah, Data Cloud Sandbox is a huge product/project, if you will. It isn't really a single thing that we just turn on, but rather we made the data lake available. We built the provisioning services, but at the same time, Data Cloud is such a massive product with so many features, right? If you think about it, each tab is almost a capability of its own. The data stream itself, we have so many different stream types. We have insights. We have our resolution. We have our actions, and many more. And so we work with all the feature team to make sure, hey, first of all, it's functionable and usable in the sandbox, and you can get it to a ready state. And now we're kind of into the next step of looking into where are the areas we want to improve on in terms of configuration. On the connector side, I know they've always looked into on the CRM connections how to swap, because even today, without thinking about sandboxes, when you set a connection, you cannot change the connection, right? So if you create a connection with a sandbox for testing purposes, and then you refresh the sandbox without even Data Cloud in there, the connection breaks and you need to start over. So our connection data stream team has been looking into how they can further enhance their experience, both in connections and pausing, but I don't have too much detail to share at this point.
Okay, and I think Brian Snyder has a +1 on that. He thinks that data streams need to be more editable and that they're also having issues with that right now. So maybe something that we can take back, Brian and Emma, to the product team that is managing data streams and get that on their radar. Also, another great way is the ideas exchange. I know I personally comb through that, and then I bug product managers about certain things that I see have high points. So also think about posting that on the ideas exchange as well. Great questions and great discussion. Just a reminder to those of you that may have joined the stream a little bit late, we are taking questions from those that are posting them in LinkedIn and those that are posting them on YouTube and chat. So if you have a question about DevOps for Data Cloud, just post your questions in the chat, and Kim and Christy will get those to me so that I can get them to our product experts to answer them. All right. So our next question comes from Ray Rojas. And Ray Rojas' question is, any concerns if we use DevOps Center and another CI/CD app, such as Copado? Wondering if I can use DevOps Center for small, quick changes and then use Copado for more complex deployments, or different dev teams use a different tool. Wondering how the same repo will work with it or get confused or cause conflicts. So those that may not be familiar, and Gilson, I'm not sure if maybe familiar, but Copado is one of our App Exchange products. Is this a question that you'd like to take, Gilson? Or okay.
Yes, I can take this one. So thank you for that use case, because this is the first time that I hear about this. I haven't tried myself, but DevOps Center work itself in its own branch. Like when you set up your project, you create your own repo, or you can use an existing one. You could put use. I can see a use case where you can use DevOps Center for small changes, and Copado for more big changes. What it could happen is that if you use the same repo, it might lead to conflict, because you are adding changes, and source control can flag it as a conflict, but then you can resolve those conflicts directly in source control. So you should be able to. Uh, I haven't tried it myself, so I can double check on that, but I do see that could work. I can just say, just try it out and see if it works for you. Either way, I can reach out to you, Ray, offline, and then we can try it out
Yeah,
and
if
see
I
how.
can add, at least we know certain that the metadata you're working on is coming from the same place, right? So both DevOps Center and Copilot is using the same metadata API, which is where we're adding the Data Cloud metadata into as well, to make it available for you to access. And we actually have some conversation with them as well to help them to start testing it. But obviously, it varies on your use cases, right? What are you pulling and deploying? What's your team breakdown like? Is it purely in individual areas, or do they have any collaboration where you need to do some sequencing? Those are things you need to kind of to dig into, and we're happy to kind of learn more from you as well.
Awesome. Thanks. And thank you, Ray, for that question. Our next question comes from Rama Krishna, and it is, are there any demos videos available to refer and understand, one, how to migrate Data Cloud components from Sandbox to Sandbox, and two, how to migrate them from Sandbox to production?
Demo. So end of last year, we actually did a webinar on Data Cloud Sandbox and a quick DevOps overview, in which we actually showed a couple of demos. One is how to set up Data Cloud Sandbox, which is pretty straightforward, but still good to kind of have a end-to-end view. And then we actually did show deploying changes from Sandbox to another org using chain sets and CLI. So definitely look into that. I also share that with our team here, so they can share after this session. And we do have more content planned. So I saw another question earlier as well, asking about having more detail documentation on this metadata work. It's not that it's missing. It's just that we haven't released it yet, because we don't want the content to go out before the API is actually available for you to use, and then you get confused, like, why can't I access XYZ, or only see partial of the stuff. And so our content strategy is, once the API goes live, help documentation will come live. We do have a blog post in the works to go a lot deeper into an end-to-end use case. And at TDX, we'll also have a dedicated session on DevOps as well, to show you a lot more in-depth detail on how to pull metadata and deploy them. So more content to come. If you want to see it right now, check out that webinar we had end of last year. I think you should be able to find it fairly easily. I presented with Jitin on my team. So just look up our names and Data Cloud Sandbox, you might see it. But we'll also share it with the team, so you can find it easily after session.
Awesome question. Thank you, Rama, for that question. The next question comes from Nicholas. And I'm not sure that we will be able to answer this question for you, Nicholas, but we're going to give it a shot, because you said you've been waiting weeks to answer this question. So it is, why did we mix Data Cloud objects and fields with Salesforce objects and fields? Shouldn't it be new metadata types? And why are metadatas with hard-coded IDs in it example custom object account, and then along ID underscore DLL, or custom field account underscore DLL / account number. And that's a long question, so I'm trying to see if I can find it here in the chat to display it for everyone. Does anybody want to take a stab at that question?
Yeah, I think this will be me as well.
Okay.
From the data kit side. So let me think about this a bit. Let's take a step back on Data Cloud metadata itself. So a key thing is Data Cloud. We wanted to make sure we align with the kind of core platform so that entities can show up. We have pages to power them natively, just like you would expect from rest of the core objects, right? When you create a account object, for example, you can wire it out with Flow. You can have triggers on it. You can have pages. Obviously, this is a new class of object, right? Because our volume is a lot bigger with the big data nature. In fact, we actually have technically the metadata on both our core platform end, which is what you see, and also our kind of data lake end. But to make it, seamless and align with the experience, we focus on the core metadata itself. Now, the entity itself is different. And so if you look at like the developer name for like account from the data model side, you will see, it's like underscore DLM, because that's the data model object. And then we have like DOO, which is our data lake objects, and CIO for calculate insights. So these are the different object types. It might not be as easily noticeable, but they are different entities, even when you access them from the metadata API side. But with regards to the ID, I think that was kind of a evolution that you're witnessing. So when we first launched, the account could be coming from multiple different sources, right? Because Data Cloud can be connected not just to your source org, but you can ingest data from your many other orgs you have, right? So you have 5 orgs. Now you're bringing account from 5 different sources. How do you differentiate the source object, the DLO here, right? Is this DLO coming in from org A, org B, or org C? They might have different schema as well. So how do you differentiate them? So back then, that was a decision came from the stream side to decide to use the org ID essentially to differentiate them. But now that we're working on the sandbox world, we then noticed that, hey, that's a bit confusing because your sandbox org ID will be different and you're mapping things differently. So as part of this, we actually introduced a feature in collaboration with the stream team to now support aliases. So any net new streams you're connecting, any new sources you're connecting, instead of the org ID, you can actually choose the alias. So the alias will be the one that's going to append in there. But unfortunately, for existing ones, that's there. I think the stream team is looking into how to make it easier. I mean, there's a lot of things I think people want to see on our data stream side, including switching sources, connections, changing schema. So those are the things that they'll be looking into. But that's kind of how you got the ID today, and it is something I need to work with. It is something you can potentially change if you pull through metadata API and change in CLI, but you need to weigh what's the advantages and disadvantages of doing so.
Awesome. That was a great answer, William. I'm hoping that helps a bit, Nick. I see you have a couple more questions, but what you can do is you can post them in our Trailblazer community, either the Salesforce developers Trailblazer community or the Data Cloud Trailblazer community. There's both of those, and we could start like a longer thread on that. That is one of the things I will say that people get most confused about when they come over to Data Cloud from Salesforce. It's one of the things that also confused me the most, because a lot of Data Cloud standard data model objects have the same name as Salesforce standard objects. So you'll see account, you'll see lead, you'll see case, those, and then people will think that those are actually Salesforce standard objects that are actually in their CRM org, when they're in all actuality, they're not. And even the data lake object that gets created from the data stream, you have the ability to rename that as you're creating that data stream, but that gets confusing for people as well if it's coming in from a CRM object, because it's going to actually tack on the org ID name onto that standard Salesforce object name. So actually what you're seeing is actually not the account name, it's actually the org ID that's getting appended from the Salesforce CRM org that is connected. All right, now to my experts and everybody watching, we only have 15 minutes left, give or take. So I'm also, and there's a lot more questions. I'm also asked my experts to speed up their answers just a little bit so we can get through as many questions as we can on the call. All right. Our next one comes in from Pavan Kumar, which is all the Data Cloud components can be deployed by using SFDX, right? Any components which does not support yet, any manual activities after deployment. We are not using Data Cloud yet, still in pipeline. So novice question.
Yeah, so to keep it short, we actually have a help page for Data Cloud Sandbox. If you go into that page, there's a table we added below to show you all the Data Cloud features, whether or not they support merge back, is what we're calling it for now, which is basically the operation to do deployment. So if you see a check mark, that means that feature currently supports deploying from sandbox to sandbox or sandbox to prod. If it's an X, that means it's not supported yet. Either it's in the works on the roadmap, or maybe there's reasons from the product team to think that shouldn't be deployable in the first place. So definitely go check that out first. And if you have questions, then you can reach out to us.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer, William. And our next one actually is from Nicholas again. How are the environments synced in case of conflicts with a flow? That's a great question.
Environments sync with A-Flow?
I believe he's talking about merge conflicts between environments. Can you, yeah, I think that's what you mean, Nicholas. If that's not what you mean, type quickly in the chat, more clarification. But I think that's what he means.
Yeah, so that part is something that we're still working on, at least on the Data Cloud side. I'll let Gilson add in more on kind of conflict itself. But on the Data Cloud side, again, we're starting with just kind of updates, given these are all process definitions, right? You're not kind of replacing the field and so on. And so we're doing additions. We haven't added the structure changes yet. That will be something on our roadmap as well. So for the time being, it's really about just kind of updating your process definition and kind of checking out the versioning.
So it looks like he added further clarification, and it was in relation to DevOps Center. So managing conflicts with DevOps Center.
Okay, I can answer that. And I was trying to think it was more merge config in source control. In that case, we honor mergeability rules if we don't let you promote to the next stage. So what we ask is that you go to source control and resolve the conflicts. And in that case, after it is resolved and the PR is mergeable, then you can deploy. We do have in our roadmap for the future to provide better, let's say, experience in that area so that you can actually do it in DevOps Center, but that's more on the future roadmap item.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer. And it looks like Ryan Cox posted something in here, which is very, very true. You can always remove that appended OR ID from the data stream's name when you're creating it, which is in relation to an earlier discussion that we were just having. So those of you that might not know that, you can do that when you're creating your data stream and your data lake object. All right. Now, our next question comes from, I'm trying to make sure these are all DevOps Center related before I ask them or DevOps related, sorry, not DevOps Center, DevOps related before I ask them. And this one, we'll go to Emma's question. Can you please explain more on what merge back support is? I saw mention on roadmap with metadata API mention. However, wasn't aware this was possible for Data Cloud metadata since some of the config is also data.
Yeah, so that's we use merge back as more of a general term internally to start with, but it's really about supporting DevOps. So when we think about merge back, it's about supporting your deployment between sandbox environments or sandbox or production. That's really what merge back is. Because when we say DevOps, sometimes people have different impression, like, is this about just kind of source control or like creating ISV package? So merge back is essentially supporting these movement, and our path is to support it via metadata API, which, as I mentioned earlier, will come live very soon. Got slightly delayed, and for us to make this deployable, that's why the metadata in the data kit is really important. Because, like you said, right, when you look at a data stream or CI, for example, the actual roles in the UI technically are data, but the definition behind it is the process and the actual metadata you're packaging. And that's why data kit is important here, because we essentially abstract that to make it almost like a process snapshot or template, if you will, so that whatever you add into the data kit, the whole thing is captured. And so when you deploy it, not only is it sequence, but then we will replay it so that the stream is fully deployed or the CI is fully created, including the role that you see in the UI. And that's how you get both the metadata and data. And that's why it was, quite a challenge for us to support in the first place.
Awesome. Great answer. And our next question comes from Brian Snyder. Will we ever be able to edit the data source field on data streams so that after a sandbox refresh, we can repoint data streams at dev environments instead of prod?
Yeah, I think I kind of covered this earlier on the connection, the CRM stream part as well. So yeah, it is a CRM connection enhancement that needs to be done on our data stream team to support you kind of swapping out the connection with the objects. I know that's something that they're aware of, but I think it's not an easy challenge that they're looking into and they're prioritizing. So I don't know where it is right now, but definitely keep asking it. Like Danielle said, sharing the idea exchange. We do look at the VOC as well. That customer asking for this, and hopefully we'll get that on some more clarity on roadmap for you.
All right, thanks. Our next question comes from Kyle Schultz. And it is, as we plan our data cloud implementation and integrate it into our DevOps processes, what key challenges should we anticipate, specifically ensuring metadata consistency with the evolving metadata API and data kits and optimizing sandbox strategies, given the zero copy data model?
Yeah, good question. I know, Gilson, you want to chime in on DevOps side. But from kind of environment perspective, I think the key takeaway, if you will, for today is, hey, Data Cloud is independent each sandbox. We don't copy any data. And so, yeah, if you have a BYOL source that you can bring your data in without ingesting, that might be a quicker way for you to say, hey, I don't want to re-ingest all these data. Let me just set a few connections and have access to data. But it really depends on what kind of data you're testing with and what you need, right? If you're testing a flow, you just need a few hundred rows to test a trigger, for example. But if you're testing like a resolution rule, and you probably need a lot more data to make sure your rules are tuned in a way to get you the result you want. So that's kind of how you're thinking about it in terms of environments and how many teams you have, right? That's how many sandboxes you will need to work with in collaboration. And then in terms of deployment, I think we kind of covered that earlier today. It's really about these process definition and sequencing. And so I think that's where the challenge would be. The bigger implementation, the more metadata you might be deploying, the more sequencing you might need to prepare ahead. We're working our best to hopefully make it easier for you by giving you a manifest of the package content so you don't need to pick through them. And we're also working into how to improve the sequencing experience and help you provide some automated sequencing as well. So it's easier for you to get started. But those are things that we're kind of evolving. And I'll pass it to Gilson.
Yeah, thank you. I would also like to add that good DevOps ALM process would help you in this case, like ensuring that you have a sequence. I know William talked a little bit about it. Like start deploying, working or making changes in a dev environment, and once you're done, like move it along in your pipeline to test and then production, and making sure that before you get it to testing or before you get it to production to test it. And also another one is try to also provide an environment or a sandbox to each of your developers, because that way you can develop in isolation. In that case, you ensure that your changes won't conflict with another changes. And like I mentioned, you just try to always move less left from right, just developing in one stage. Once you're done, go to test, and then go to production. And sometimes I hear from users that sometimes they make changes in the test stage, and that can cause more conflict, and then you don't get that in the development environment. So it gets complicated. So as a summary, from left to right.
Yeah. Plus one to what Gilson said regarding dedicated sandboxes. One thing is one of the things I notice customers do is as they add more clouds, like they purchase field service and then they may purchase CPQ and then data cloud, they don't scale out, like their teams scale out as they implement more and more Salesforce products, but their environment strategy still is a bit lagging. And so they don't tend to scale out their environment usage as well. So as Gilson mentioned, having a dedicated sandbox per developer in the dev stage is crucial so that you're not stepping on each other's toes. we bundle a bunch of sufficient quantity of developer sandbox licenses in every org, so make use of that. And then when it comes to testing, similarly, have a full sandbox for UAT of your different projects, and again, try to parallelize that work instead of having instead of sharing the sandbox across different projects.
All right. I think that covered the next question that someone had asked about best practices. I think that generally just covered the best practices question. We are only about 3 minutes left in the entirety of the stream. So I'm going to feed you a very quick one, which is it one sandbox license per org, or the license covers all sandboxes? That's comes from Corey Broderick.
I can take that one. That's good, William. So I'm assuming when you say is it one sandbox license per org, there are two things to keep in mind here, right? There's the environment license itself, that's the sandbox, and then there's the Data Cloud credits for using Data Cloud within the sandboxes. You obviously need one sandbox license per org, and so if you have two full sandbox licenses, you can create only 2 full sandboxes. However, the Data Cloud credits, they apply to all of your orgs, so all of your sandboxes. So it's consumption based, right? If you use more Data Cloud in one sandbox versus the other, you're going to get charged accordingly. But you just have to buy one single credit SKU, which will then be applied across all of your sandboxes for that given production org. If you have multiple production orgs, then you have to have the credit SKUs in each of your production orgs.
Awesome. Thanks, Rohit, for that response. Okay, so I did see a couple of questions in the chat relating to other products within Data Cloud. I saw some on data streams and refreshing. I saw some on Query Editor. And I also saw some, I think, on Einstein Studio. We aren't going to be able to cover those questions today, but what I will say is post those in the Salesforce Developers Trailblazer community, and mostly I think the Data Cloud Trailblazer community or the Data Blazers community, because all of our product managers are in there and we can get you answers to those questions. I would like to show a very appreciative comment from Emma, which says, amazing feat you guys have achieved with this. Excited for metadata API support coming soon. And I appreciate all the insights shared today, especially you, William, on my questions. Things are making more sense now. All right. So thank you, Emma. This is the reason why we do this every month, to help you all to get your questions answered from our product managers and product experts. I personally want to say a deep thank you to you, Gilson Canario, Rohit, as well as you, William, for taking time out of your day to join me on stream to answer the questions from the community. Thank you all. And for those of you, we were not able to get through all of the questions prior to hitting the time limit. So those of you that still have questions, I encourage you to post them on our Trailblazer community, the Salesforce developers, or that Data Cloud community, and we can get you answers to those questions. Anyone that tuned in today, thank you so much for taking the time out of your days to join us. And we will be back next month with another Ask Me Anything session on another topic. And I'm hoping to see everyone on March 5th and 6th. Did I get those dates right? 5th and 6th at TDX. And I'm hoping to see you at all of our sessions as well. And with that, we are going to go ahead and say goodbye. Say goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.